Hello and welcome to video 3 of the Roland Gaia and subtractive synthesis. You don't have to own a Gaia. Any synthesizer that's subtractive architecture, such as this, that has LFO, oscillator, filter, amplifier. This is standard synthesizer. So today we are going to be building one of those long, sweeping, very complex sounding sci-fi sounds. Today we're building this. And to do this, of course, we're going to use all three tones and just about every control on here. So if you've been wondering how to build these really long, complicated sounding sci-fi sweeps, we're going to be building that today. So to get started, I'm going to erase this patch by holding down the Shift key, pressing right. And we're back to a sawtooth wave with absolutely nothing done to it. Now I've already preset these controls back to a neutral setting. Everything's at a neutral setting. If you don't understand the neutral setting on these digital synths, then please go back to video 1 or 2 of my tutorials. I don't want to keep explaining that because it's getting too repetitive. So we're all neutral on the controls, and we have a simple sawtooth wave playing. So we're going to begin today by selecting a square wave, and we're going to start with the amplifier envelopes. We want to get that long sweep. We want it to fade in, and then we want it to fade out, like that. Except we're going to be building it very long, like this, where it takes a long time for it to build up and come back down again. But it takes so long that during the editing process, you don't want to be checking out what you're doing on something that long. So what we're going to do, we're going to shorten everything until all the editing's done. And then once the editing's done, we're going to lengthen them again so it doesn't take so long. Otherwise, we'll have to sit there for 30 seconds to a minute for it to complete its cycle. So we have, right now, the attack and decay set for the volume to come up and down. Sustain, we're going to keep a little bit of that volume after it comes back down. Just a little bit. Not much. And the release will be about the same amount. Right now, release is when you release the key, and you can see it's just fast. Now it's nice and smooth. So that's our temporary envelope until we get our filters and LFO set up. So now we want to make so we got our sweep here now on the volume, but now we're going to make a sweep on the filter. And the only way to get a sweep on the filter is you have to make a filter change. Just for information purposes, I am working 1 octave down. Okay, so I'm using the low pass filter and just doing a a little minor cutoff and a little bit of resonance. So now to sweep this over time, go ahead and we want the same time, so match your filter envelope time to your amplitude time. And of course, to hear the change, we're going to have to change our envelope depth. So now we're starting with the and we're going to bring the sustain up just a little bit. You won't really hear that on the filter because it's such a subtle change. But what you are going to hear is our release, just like our release over here is about halfway up. When I release the key, you can hear there's a break in the sound. That's what the release on the filter's for. Now my release will be a smooth release that matches the amplitude or the volume. So if anybody's been wondering what that release is for, you won't hear its effect unless you have a release on your volume. You can hear it, it's on the key up. So if I turn this off, this, you can see this has no effect because these things all work together. So on key release we got a different sound that we don't want. So when I bring my envelope up to about the same as that one, now if I release my keys before the envelope does its cycle, I get the smooth release. Otherwise it does its cycle and goes to no tone at all. Okay, again, this is a lot faster sweep than what we want. We want that real slow one like I showed you at the beginning. And we're going to move all these up as soon as we get an LFO on here. So now I'm going to use the LFO to put a vibrating rate, or what I'm going to call a tail, at the end of this sound. So I'm going to move everything up. I'm going to move the CAC and decay up a little bit here. So I got a little longer sweep. Now I want to add a filter depth vibrating rate. So you can see what this filter depth is doing. It's cycling this filter sweep we're making over and over again by using the filter depth. Now we don't want that to happen right away either. We want to be able to play this without, we want it to sound like this. So we want the vibrating rate to come in after we've pressed the keys down. And the way to do that automatically is to use the fade time. As you bring the fade time up, it'll take longer and longer to bring that in. Now if your fade time exceeds the amount of time that it takes for this filter envelope to sweep through, then you won't even hear the rate, like this. Now the tone and the filter sweep all went through, and you didn't hear the vibrating rate because it is actually longer. It's because the fade time is actually longer than what these are. So here you don't hear it, but with no fade time it comes, or partial. Okay. And that's about all there is to this first tone. We've made our sweeping tone with the envelope where the volume slowly rises and then comes back down. We've made our sweeping filter change with our envelope. And we've made a slow fade time into attaching what I'm calling a tail vibration on there. Because it doesn't start with the vibration, but I'm going to have it sweeping into it. Okay, now that's our first tone, and what we're going to do with these other ones is copy this one to this one and this one, and we're going to change a little bit so that what we're dealing with here, as you can see now, is timing. These envelopes are dealing with timing. How much time on the amplifier envelope, how much time does it take for the tone to come up and fade out? On the filter envelope, how much time does it take to sweep that filter, to make that filter cutoff change that we just did in resonance? How much time does it take? And that's what these envelopes are doing. Now the LFO doesn't work on time, but the fade in does. The fade in gives us a delay time before the vibrating rate is attached. So we're dealing with time on all of this stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to make all three of our tones with this short sweep. Like I said, we're going to lengthen this later. And then once we've got all our tones built up, we'll do a mass edit on all three, bring all those tones up at the same time to get that long sweep, and then we'll do a little bit of editing after that on the individual ones. Because the goal today is we're going to make these long filter sweeps, but I've been talking about timing. Each one of these tones, or even though it's a tone, there's three synthesizers in here. So we have 3 LFOs, 3 oscillators, 3 filters, 3 amplifiers. We're dealing with all 3. So in timing, we're going to change the timing of each one of these so that the tails start at different times. The vibrating rate tail starts at different times. The amplitude starts at different times, and the filter. That will give each one of these tones different timing. So that's how you get this really complex sound. Nothing's happening all at the same time. All 3 synthesizers, all 3 tones are running at different times. So as we go through, you're going to see how this works. So right now, we have our first tone, and we're going to copy that with our second tone. So it's tone 1 to copy 2. There's our copied tone. First change I'm going to make, because the envelopes are all going to be set up differently after we do the mass editing. So we're going to make fairly minor changes to these last 2 tones. First thing I'm going to do is change the wave. We're going to go, the first one was a square, now we're going to go to this sawtooth. And I'm going to bring the pitch up. I'm going to bring the pitch up 2 octaves. Okay, so now from tone 1 to tone 2, we've changed the wave, we've changed the octave 2 octaves higher. I'm going to do a slightly different filter change. Just to give it a little more high frequency, so that sounds different from this one. And we're going to change the LFO shape too. The first LFO shape was this one. We're going to change the shape to this sawtooth. And I'm going to change the rate time much higher. So what I'm looking for is sparkle on this one. When this filter comes, when this rate, LFO rate, is applied to this filter, we're doing the filter depth again. So I'm looking for that sparkle. So now we got a different LFO wave shape and a different rate time than on this, in our first tone. First tone we're using a sine wave with a much slower rate. This one's 2 octaves up with a different shape, different rate, slightly different filter. All the envelopes have been the same. All the timing is still the same. We're going to change the timing later. Okay, that's it for tone number 2. So now I'm going to do a copy from 2 to 3. And I'm going to bring this down an octave. We're going to stay with the sawtooth waveform. We'll do a slightly different filter again. And we're going to change the LFO again too. Now we're going to use a square wave and again a different rate. So right now, all our envelopes are the same, all the timing is the same, but we have applied a slightly different filter to each one of these tones. Each tone is a different octave. This is the normal octave, this is up 1 octave, this up 2 octaves, up 1 octave. And we've changed the LFO wave shape and rate for each one of these tones. That's where we're at. So tone 1, we have the sine wave with a rate like that. Tone 2, up an octave, sawtooth with a much higher rate. Remember, this rate dial doesn't apply except to the last edit you made. So it only applies to this last edit 3. So don't look at the rate dial. You're looking more at the rate light. Now the third one, we used a square wave. Now all these LFO waves give us that different tail. That square wave gives you that off, on, off, on. Sawtooth gives us that really fast, squiggly one. And the sine wave gives us a real smooth in and out. And that's our 3 waves, or 3 tones. And that's almost what we want it to sound like. Except we want everything longer. So, I'm going to hold that button down so that all 3 edits are on. Now we're going to edit the envelopes identically to all of these. And we're going to extend them to the length that they're supposed to be for that long filter sweep. Okay, it's fairly complex sounding now, but it's not like what you heard at the beginning because everything is matched. The only thing that's not matched is, remember, we applied a different rate to the LFO, the vibration, that we applied to the filter. That vibrating, repeating filter has got different rates on all of them. But the fade time is the same, and the timing is all the same. So now we go back to our individuals. And this wave, we're going to move the fade time up different from this one. Now remember, all three are at this level here, so you got to remember where you're at. So we're going to apply, we're going to get this one to start much later. And this one, we're going to start earlier. So now we got this timing on this one. This timing for the LFO on that one. You can see that one's coming in pretty late. And then this one. So now all the timing is different on these as these tails that we've been putting on the end of these. So now, when we get them all together, what do they sound like? Okay, so we're pretty close now. If you listen carefully, you can hear all these different timings of the envelopes are starting at different times. So now, if you want, you can change the individual envelopes for each one of these on the filter and amplifier. So on our main one, if I start that one a little earlier, and then this one, start that one a little earlier, and this one, we make this high frequency one with a little fast tail on it. That will be the slowest amplifier sweep to go up. So now when we put them all together, the timing of the amplifier and the timing of the LFO rate are all a little different. So just to add a little, because we're trying to add as much movement going all over the place as possible, so it sounds really complex. So another thing we can do is the filter depth on the LFO can be changed for each one of these too. So we make that one nice and smooth. This one, you can see how much more is added here. And then the last one. This one has that square wave on it. Now you can inverse these filters. That's where the as you can see, we're just moving the timing of everything all around, so we get much more and much more complex sounds. Okay, now since we've made all these editings, let's check out the actual volume of these, each one of these tones. As you can see, that one's not as loud. So these two here aren't as loud. Now, of course, I'm making all these adjustments with the max level because this synthesizer doesn't have to put filter cutoffs on there. You lose a lot of volume. So what we're going to do is take the loudest one and turn that one down so we can hear these other two better. And then turn the overall volume up. Now we can hear that nice high frequency one coming in. Okay, now we're going to add effects, but I'll just do a quick review here. I was trying to explain how these envelopes here are working on timing. On the amplifier envelope, how much time does it take the tone to rise up to max volume and come back down? On the filter envelope, how much time does it take to make that filter change sweep, that change? It's going to sweep that change smoothly in there because we got these set at a attack and decay, a very slow attack and decay. You can, and then on the LFO, we changed wave shapes for each one, and we changed rate times. So as you can see, everything's happening now at different times, and that's what gives it all its complexity. Now, if we turn them all on, now we're going to add our effects, which certainly helps out a lot. So I'm adding reverb, delay. Because this is a spacey effect, go ahead and add a lot of reverb. And if you saw my first video, you can use the pitch shifter too. By adding the pitch without shifting the pitch, which means both these controls, control 1 and level 1, are at the 12 o'clock position for the pitch shifter, so that no pitch is made. But when we hold down our effects button on the D-beam and select pitch shifter, now the D-beam has been assigned to the pitch shifter so that we can get so it actually shifts pitch. So it gives us an extra dynamic when playing that. You could also use, we've lost a lot of low end, so you could actually use the low boost if you wanted to too. So here's where we're at on our tone. coming pretty close to the end here. And that's how you get those big, long, complex filter sweeps. I mean, you can get more crazy too. I mean, the envelope depth on the filter, we never shifted that any between the tones. So let's, I'm going to go ahead and write this, because if you accidentally hit one of your bank numbers while you're working on this, which I did twice on this video, and I had to restart the video. I accidentally hit one of these numbers. As soon as you hit one of those, all that work you've done is gone. If all you've done is 30 seconds worth of work, who cares? Well, I think we've got probably 15, 20 minutes in there now. So I'm going to do a write on the patch that I'm working on. So I don't lose what I've got. I would have normally written that a long time ago, but got caught up in the tutorial. So now let's do a little experimenting. We've got our tone saved. We can't screw it up. I mean, if this is what you liked, then we're safe. We got it. So now we used an exact same envelope depth on our filter envelope for all three of these. So let's do some editing on that. Each one of these. And let's see what that sounds like. That sounded better. I like that. I'm going to save that one. Right? Patch number 7. Right again. Now let's open this up dynamically a little bit. Let's take these last two tones and let's do a panning on them to give us a wider stereo image. And if you remember the last time, if you hold down the cancel button, the detune knob becomes a pan left and right. So I'm going to take tone 2, only tone 2. Don't forget your green light over here. It has to be on the right tone that you're editing. I'm going to hold down my cancel key and I'm going to pan left, and then down here I'm going to pan right. Let's see if that opened up a little more here. I thought that was just too much panning, so I'm going to turn that back a little bit. So I'm going to go about 6 numbers over instead of the quarter way over. That's better. And there we've just made our sci-fi. Now whether this is actually playable on a melody depends on your envelopes. You can change your envelopes to make it more playable. Right now let's see if we can actually play this. playable. Very slow. It is playable. As I said on the last video, your playability depends on mostly on your amplitude envelopes. Since these are attack and decay are way slow, it takes a long time to get the volume up. It takes 15-20 seconds to get it to sweep up to maximum volume. So that means your playing will be slow, because when you press a key down, you have to wait till the tone comes up to something that can at least be heard over the left hand. And before we go, we'll do one more edit here. This is I'm going to save what we got. Bottom section is, it's got that grit in there. Now if you want that grit, that's good. That's good, you got it. But there's a way to get that grit out of there and still keep nice high frequencies in your right hand. Now this is playability again, and we're going to be dealing with the key follow. Now I'm going to leave tone 1 alone. I'm going to edit 2 and 3. So we only want to listen to 2 and 3 while we edit. If I want to remove that grit, you can use this key follow function and watch what happens. That's grittier, smoother. Pull over left, pull over right. So if you want to smooth up this left hand and take the grit out of it and keep the good high frequencies in the right hand, use the key follow to do that. So here is the original tone, and I'm going to take the grit out of it and smooth it up into this. But the right hand will still be high, still retain all the high frequencies I had before. You can play with this tone as you play your song too. I went over the key follow function in video 1, so if you want to see more of that, you can see it there. But what it does is add playability to your keyboard. If you didn't want that gritty sound in the bottom, you can put the filter that has the least amount of high frequency in it at the bottom, and then the open section of the filter at the top is unchanged. Okay, so one more big filter sweep before we go, and let's turn them all on first. And there you go. Well, thanks for listening. Hopefully I'll come up with, you can write in and give me some ideas if you're having trouble with other parts of the synthesizer. Maybe I can do a video on that next. Well, thanks for watching.